All right. We have Scott Cower with us today. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thanks, Bradley.
And
Nice to see you.
what's interesting about having you on is you're in Japan, so it's roughly 11 o'clock there.
Almost 11 o'clock. Yeah, it's about almost 11 o'clock here. 11 p.m.
So tell us about you and give us that 30,000 foot view of Scott Cower.
I was born a poor black child. No, I can't say that. Okay. But no, I was born in Miami, Florida, and I grew up most of my early life in Miami, Florida until I was about 21 years old. Joined the Navy. Got married, then joined the Navy. Lived in Illinois, moved to Virginia. My Navy career, I was a radar technician. I spent 12 years in the Navy, and I got out the day before the Twin Towers were hit. The day
Wow.
before the Twin Towers were hit, I was out. So, and then a few years after, I didn't want to work for the government anymore. I mean, many people can probably understand that. So, I wanted to do whatever else I could do. So, I had a few different jobs. I worked a call center. I did tech support. I went on after that. I got divorced, and then so while I was divorced, I wanted to get into some sort of social atmosphere, and I worked at a TGI Fridays for a little short time there, and just to get out, just to say how do how, and it was good because I loved sales, and I thought that would be a good stepping stone kind of thing to learn how to interact with people a little bit better, and then I started working at a motorcycle shop as a parts manager, Ducati motorcycle shop, and then became the general manager and met my current wife, and she's Japanese, and moved to Japan, and I love it.
Been there ever since.
Been here for 9 years now. 9 years, yeah, it's really nice.
That's a great point as far as the Twin Towers. So I got out of the Army before 9/11, and I want to
Mm.
say it was about a year beforehand, and I was in a shortage MOS. So I got a phone call right after 9/11 happened,
Hmm.
and I, answer the phone, and it's a guy named Staff Sergeant Craig, I think his name was, and he said he needed me to update all of my information because they were doing callbacks. And I said, well, I said, Sergeant Craig, I said, there's some things that you need to know about me. He said, well, what's that? And I said, well, as far as the Army's concerned, I'm flat footed, I wet the bed, and I'm gay. Because back then,
Yeah,
right,
exactly. Don't ask,
those,
don't tell.
those were immediate disqualifiers. And he said, he said, I get the picture. You have a nice life.
Yeah, exactly,
So you
exactly.
move, so you move over to Japan,
Hmm.
and tell us about the atmosphere of Japan, because Japan is a very intriguing country to a lot of Americans, as far as what we think Japan is versus what is real. And I think you can tell that story pretty well.
What's interesting is that when I was little, when I was younger, every like you grow up and you get this influence of like karate movies and Godzilla and stuff like that, and Speed Racer. When you're a kid, you find out, oh, Speed Racer is a Japanese animation show, and then you get involved with that kind of stuff. I was never big into the anime kind of thing or anything like that. I did like the Godzilla movies; I thought they were great, but and then you get a little bit older in your teens, and you start to go to malls, and the first thing you see in the mall is you see this little Japanese restaurant in the food court, and you go over there, man. Oh man, they got Jack Daniel's barbecue, whiskey chicken or something like this,
Sure.
and I come to Japan, 25 years later, and that doesn't exist here. You know, what do you mean? I want, I want to go get this whiskey chicken somewhere. It doesn't exist. So it's like our perception of everything, the way we view things in the States a lot of times is really biased, and it's not biased in a negative way per se. I mean, some people will claim that's a negative thing, but it's not biased in the negative way. It's just that we're just ignorant of it. We don't know. We don't, we're not privy to that culture. And then you step into it and you're like, oh, this is pretty nice.
I
Just
always
examples of background there. I mean, it's just beautiful gardens like this all over the place.
I always had this idea of the Japanese culture being like 99.9% are just super cool, laid back, kind of pseudo socialites, if that makes any sense. Wearing, because you see kind of the goofy outfits, or they're bringing back the American 80s trends, which I don't know how I feel about that, from a clothing trend or style. And then there's that 0.1%, which is, the Yakuza, right? And don't mess with those guys. So you can't really sum up Japanese culture by watching Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. Is that
No, you can't. You can't. You can't. That was filmed here. A lot of it was filmed here, but you just don't get it. But they do have those races. They're illegal as all get out, but they do have those races. They race down the mountains just like in the anime series. They still race across the turnpikes up there late at night. They get busted for it all the time, but they still do it. It's
what's
pretty
the
interesting.
what's the part of the Japanese culture that you admire the most?
Their attention to detail when it comes to food and cooking. It's just amazing. Like I go back to that, the whiskey chicken stuff, but it's like the food here, the sweets are never over sweet. They're not like super rich where you can like crunch into the sugar kind of rich in America's sweets. They're sweet, but not too sweet. And it's like just right. And they are perfectly cut all the time. Everything is fresh. You can go, you can go to the dinkiest place on a strip mall somewhere area. Not there's no real strip malls, but kind of like in the back alley somewhere in Japan, and it's totally safe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not. It's clean, but it's not like trash thrown all over the place. It's a little dank and dark or something like that. But you can go into one of those shops. It's like a stand-up bar where you'll have like some fried yakitori and beer's like $2 each, and you can drink. Going off a little bit there. There's a thing in Japan called nomi hodai. Nomi means drink, and hodai is like unlimited. And what you do is that there are places in Japan, very, very, very often you can go to that have drinking for 2 hours. All you can drink, like $10.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's the equivalent of, I don't drink, but I don't know what that figures out to here. Is that 2 beers here in the US?
I
I
would
don't.
I would think so, probably on a good night. Yeah, on $2 night, it's 5 beers, right? So
Yeah.
but
So
it's
leading into
amazing.
that, so you're involved in this Eat Anything Japan, this kind of .com, which is it's kind of your baby, right?
Yeah,
So
it is my baby. I'm trying to get it built up right now, and right now it's a directory. It's a directory of all the English speaking restaurants in Japan, and by no means is it full. Uh, Going back to the restaurant things and food, just so you know, and to compare, in New York City, there's approximately 40,000 restaurants, which is a ton of restaurants.
sure.
In Tokyo alone, there are 160,000
Wow.
restaurants. Yeah.
Wow.
It's just phenomenal. It's unbelievable. But then again, metropolitan Tokyo is about 50 times the size of Manhattan. So,
How do you
it's huge.
how do you yeah, how many of the 160,000 have you eaten at?
12, 13? No.
I mean,
Well,
in order to make a directory, you have to kind of, I mean, that's got to be kind of tough to capture that within 160,000, 160,000 places to capture that into a directory, or a website. And that's got to be a lot of work.
well, we have like almost 2,100 restaurants in the list right now, and they have English menus or some sort of way to figure out what you're going to eat and whatnot. And on the side of that, the goal is to get the restaurants on board. All these restaurants, they're on our directory, but it's not like we went to the restaurant and say, hey, can we put you on the directory?
Sure.
We've done a lot of data scraping and stuff like that to get the information, and to put stuff up. So it's even the 2,100 restaurants we have now, which is plenty of restaurants for people to go to, trust me. And the big goal is, since we got lucky, is since the Olympics got pushed back for a year, we're hoping to make a name for ourselves before all that comes. Japan has a few websites already out there that would be considered our competitors, but their methodology for trying to have the English side of what they have it's very, very archaic. And so
Sure.
we're trying to make it a little bit better. We also have an app that we're working on that we're trying to get the restaurants involved with, which would be, since you don't speak Japanese and most of the play, you can go into a restaurant if they're using our app. You'd walk in and you'd have the app on your phone and you'd sit down and you have their menu. It's all on your phone. You just select what you want in English. You can see pictures, descriptions, everything, prices. You pick what you want. I want 3 of these, 2 of those. You hit a button, you hand it to the server. It's in Japanese for the server. It's already translated. They take your order and they push a button that they took your order. They hand it back to you. Everything's for you is still in English. So they don't have to speak a word of English and you don't have to speak a word of Japanese. So that's the sidecar to the directory. So getting into the restaurants, and then
Well,
it's going to take
it seems like it'd be a great tool to, especially for the Olympics, but just about anybody visiting Japan, English speaking, visiting Japan, that leads into a joke that I always made it a point to, I'm really bad at languages, but, I found that it was important to learn how to ask where the bathroom's at in any, native language for a country that I went to. Right. So,
sure.
and
It's
it that
pretty
sounds,
easy in Japan.
do what? I'm sorry.
Pretty easy to ask in Japan. So
Well, it's one of those things that you can't point at. If you're looking at a menu, you can point at something that you want to order and they'll get it. But when you have to go to the bathroom and you're in public and you're in a foreign country, how do you get
how
from
do
point
you
A to
ask?
point B?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I tell everybody that, the extent of my French is, est-ce que je peux aller au WC? Right? That's it.
Yeah. Where's
Where,
the toilet?
where's the water closet?
Yeah.
Donde está el baño in Spanish?
Well, I'll teach you for Japanese. It's pretty easy. You can say bathroom, and pretty much they get that. They understand. There's enough. It's been westernized here where there's enough vocabulary that my wife gets angry with me because I don't speak enough Japanese, but she wants to speak English in the house all the time, so she keeps up with her English. I
Sure.
teach English in school all the time. I teach English online. I do I'm home a lot, and so I don't have the huge need to learn a whole lot of the language. And I've survived for 9 years with very little. I mean, I can get by. I know how to say who, what, where, and when, and
Is
why.
it? It's sake in Japan, right? Is that
Sake,
the?
sake,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
not sake, sake.
sake. So you have ouzo. I think that's Germany,
That's
right?
Greece,
Greece.
Greece,
Okay. So
Greece.
I got to keep the alcohols straight.
Yeah,
That's important too. But,
yeah.
all right. So let's move into. So if let's go back and plug that. So eatanythingjapan.com. If you find yourself traveling to Japan after this whole health thing is done, I mean, that's a good resource for people to visit Tokyo and eat stuff that they know what they're eating,
Yeah,
or order stuff they know what they're getting.
yeah. Typos on Japanese menus are hilarious. I mean, when I first came to Japan, of course, they always confuse the R and the L when they're speaking. So, rice comes out as lice, and I've actually seen it on the menu as fresh lice in English. They try to write some English words. I went to one restaurant where it was a huge franchise of restaurants. They're all over Japan, and they had the brand new menus there, and right in big letters it said flesh salad. I was like, I don't know, I don't think I'm gonna eat that. It's like, so some of the stuff is really hilarious when you see it like that. But
We
they
we
try.
we used to have, and this is, I'm not trying to lump all of Asia into one group, but I love Vietnamese food. I mean,
Really.
I don't, something about Vietnamese food, it just, and I really like Japanese food. And what I realized is I really just didn't like Chinese food, and there were enough differences, and so I started to explore that. But um, the Vietnamese restaurant that I would go to, the owner and his wife, their English was so terrible. And I'm a very picky eater. And I'm a very picky eater in a very bad way. I don't want vegetables in my food. If I have
Right.
vegetables, and I
Are
eat
you
a
on a
lot,
keto diet? What?
well, if
Are
I
you
eat,
on the keto diet?
no, if I eat vegetables, I want those to be separate from, and
Ah, I
I
gotcha. I
do
got
eat a lot of vegetables. So I had to try and I had to try and explain to this restaurant there, this Vietnamese restaurant owner, that I only wanted rice, sauce, and chicken. And once I got him, it took me 4 years to walk down the path. And then I finally decided to make it funny that, I convinced him that, in American, that was called the fat white boy special. So when I would walk in, he's, fat white boy special, fat white boy special. And it was just hilarious. And then they went out of business. I don't know. So I haven't attempted that since, but,
Well,
let's,
rice is cheap, you know.
so let's talk about
Sure.
cancel culture, because that's one of your,
Yeah.
so
It,
you're in Japan, and you're seeing all of this stuff happen. tell Talk about that a little bit, because I mean, that just has to make you cringe.
it
uh
does. I mean, even and it's like it's not even a left or right thing sometimes because I'm conservative. I'll let everyone know I'm conservative and I vote Republican. But the thing is that I mean, these people that are it's not just the cancel culture, it's the canceling themselves. That's the thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you can't I think Jordan Peterson said it best. Don't bow to the mob. You don't bow down to the mob because there's no ideology behind the mob,
and they're
It's
weak.
they're weak. Yeah. And then and it's also like the goalposts are always shifted, I mean, you can say you're sorry, but that's never enough. And then you can be apologetic for something else, and that's still not enough. It's like constantly moving these goalposts. It's like the goalposts moving, like with the COVID stuff. At first it was like everybody's, oh my God, look how many people are dying. Look how many people are dying. Look how many. And then all of a sudden, well, the level of people dying is going down. How many cases there are? Look at cases there are. It's like, dude, you worry about someone's going to die, or you worry about the cases? Because I mean, you could get 100% cases in the United States, 99.9% of them are going to survive.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but the government, then
the
canceling people out just for thinking their ideas, you know, it's like stifling free speech. I mean, cancel culture is just it's a gateway to stifling free speech to me.
it's amazing that they're so adamant about being right, and at all cost. I mean, it's just, and I have a lot of names for these people. I just get a kick out of them. And, so you've heard me call them Twinkies and Hot Pockets and jellyfish. The jellyfish I wish would pick up a little bit more steam. A lot of people get a kick out of me calling them Twinkies. Golden on the outside, you're soft and golden on the outside and full of creamy filling on the inside, because
Right.
but jellyfish, I started calling them jellyfish right off the bat. All sting, no fun.
Spineless. Yeah, all
Yeah.
sting. Spineless.
And
Yeah, it's
the
cancel.
I think it's dangerous. And I want to, how dangerous do you think cancel culture is from the standpoint of canceling? Once you cancel everything and you're just so determined to hurt, and so determined to erase, and so determined to constantly make everybody feel as pathetic and angry and as you are, right? Not you, but these Twinkies, if you will. As somebody who is in the education side, um, how dangerous is that? Let's start off with the difference between the American culture, the people within the American culture, from an education standpoint, and or moving into an education standpoint, and the people of Japan and their educational standpoint and their culture. I mean, when you talk about what's getting canceled, would you agree that our culture is already weak as it is
Well,
here in
I
the
mean,
US?
of all cultures in the world, the American culture is, it's just, it's 250 years old, 250, 300 years old. And it's like, it's not, it's not a huge culture, but it's been the most, it's the most ironic thing that progressives are taking away our progression. That's one way to put it. Canceling history now. Canceling history out. It's like, I think I mentioned it on all of the social media things. To me, it's like, okay, well, you cancel all this stuff, and in 100 years, when you're crying about slavery and all these race relations, guess what? We're going to say, prove it. You don't have any history left. You
Mhm.
know, it's going to be all canceled out. And you've got Japan here, which has a cultural history of over like 3,500 years plus, that they can trace back. I mean, my wife can go look at the city office and she can trace relatives back 600-700 years. It's amazing how they keep track of everything. And so canceling out this stuff, it's stupid. I mean, it's just like trying to get attention.
I think
It's
it's,
like, yeah,
would
go
you
ahead.
agree that it's dangerous?
It's very
Because
dangerous.
what it, and I'm guessing, I'm just taking a shot in the dark that, the importance of maintaining all history and all aspects of culture, good and bad, is it allows people to find the good in the history and embrace what's good by learning about the bad. I
True. I agree with that.
I don't know this to be true, but has slavery ever existed in Japan?
I haven't actually looked into that. I would say, in a sense, yes, there's been kinds of slavery, but I think it would probably be more along the lines of indentured servitude more than just the slavery. Women have, been put down on the lowest level for the longest time in Japan, and it's been really hard. And my wife, she's doing fantastic at her company now. She's way up there in the corporation, but she's been working there for 32 years now. So I mean, one company, 32 years. Imagine that. I'd be bored. I mean,
And that brings up a good point. The average employment now here in the United States is 18 months. The average
it,
length of employment.
yeah, yeah. But
It,
that's actually a good thing though in some ways because uh you know, it is true if you have a high school diploma and you don't have any children before you're married, and you get a job, you're probably going to start moving up that ladder. I mean, it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot. You just have to come out of that basement, finish high school,
put down the
uh,
hot pockets.
put down the hot pockets, and tell grandma that you're going to try to make your own allowance, and
Sure.
then just get out of that and just step up. I mean, when people are younger, if it's like 18 months, that's not a bad thing. You know, these young people of today, if they get a job, they go out there, they're probably going to move up. I mean, I moved up military. It's a great way to go up, you
Hmm.
know military is upward mobility. I mean, you have the chance to make rank. That's you can make rank. I mean, you can go from an E1 all the way up to an 05, 06, 07. What's the highest one now? 010? I
Yeah.
forget
Uh,
what's the general.
there's four general ranks, right? B
There's
minus.
four, but then if you become the next one, so like do you remember the story of Admiral Borda? The
I
one he killed himself. He was the little short guy who was under Clinton when Clinton was president.
I don't. That was during my military time. I
Yeah.
probably wasn't around very often
Yeah,
to
he
pay.
came up to my radar space, took a tour, and nicest guy in the whole world. And then, like 6 months after he was there, all that scandal came out that he didn't have a star for valor or something like that. It had been misleading or something, and he killed himself. It was like,
Really.
yeah, so sad, man. It's like, what a waste. But I mean, that's kind of like a beginning thing of the cancel culture if you think about it. Back then, even back then, you know,
There's we could talk about that all day long. I
yeah,
mean, uh, I served under Slick Willie, and so did you.
same here. He
I,
came with the radar space too. Shook his hand. They were on my ship for
I
the D-Day festivities in 1994.
I was not a fan of giving Hillary a second chance to be president. That's kind of my ongoing joke.
I saw her in person, and I was scared of her then.
Yeah,
She was a no, don't. She had that look on her face. Don't fuck. Don't.
yeah,
I don't know if I can say it here, but
yeah. You can. I mean, you can say just about anything. It's just a matter of
don't flock with me. Like so. But
yeah. You can say just about anything on this interview. It's just a matter of if YouTube if you
it's
say
being nice.
yeah, they won't show it in search, right? So it'll get less plays and everything else if you use a whole bunch of swear words. But I'm not really worried about that. I mean, but going
She
back,
was an evil woman.
so let's talk about that a little bit more because I don't think people understand the military culture from the Clinton era. We were, and I don't want to get too involved in what I did in the army, but we were cannibalizing equipment to maintain mission readiness.
It was hard to get parts for my radar. It was so hard,
It
so hard.
they always talked about, were you in when they changed the pay? Uh, I don't know if the Navy experienced this or if it was just the Army, or I think that I don't know.
It's
But
probably across the board. I mean, it's all military, so
did you miss 2 weeks of pay?
no, I didn't have that happen.
So they did this thing in 1990. I think it was 1997,
I was in then.
where they moved our pay up a day, but they changed it in a way that we missed the paycheck. And literally the Army was up in arms, and then they ended up fixing it, right, from a payroll standpoint.
I would hope so.
They did this thing where they were changing it from the last day of the month to the first day of the month because to match up with whatever else. Maybe it was to match up with the other services. But we were paid on, I think it was the
It's
15th of the
starting to
month.
come back. Something like that happened. Maybe, but I don't. I don't remember missing 2 weeks.
Well, so we were supposed to get paid, and I was deployed at the time, and all of a sudden I didn't get a paycheck, and we're deployed, and I'm like, "Yep, I'm done. Right? I'm not working again until you figure out how to pay me my $600 or whatever." And people don't even realize how little we got paid back then.
Yeah, nobody realized how small it was, and most of us had families then too, right?
Yeah,
A wife and a kid, or two kids, or
and I
7.
I think I don't know what rank I was. I think I was an NCO already, but one pay period was only $600. And
Yeah,
so I was making $1,200 a month at that point as
that's what I remember. It was around that. Yeah, it was around that.
and when I joined, I was only making $603 a month after tax.
Yeah, yeah, I remember at boot camp. That was boot camp era, and then right after boot camp. But I was in a 6YO program, 6-year obligation program. So after I finished, because it was advanced electronics and stuff, so I went through. After I got done with boot camp, I was at E3 already. So I started out as E1, then after boot camp, I made E3, and then when I finished A school, I got E4, and
Sure.
then it was hard to make rank in my rate. And then it took me forever to get to E5. And then I got out as E5, so in 2001. And
Yeah.
then I never did anything with my GI Bill or anything like that. I should have, because after I got out, they had told me I had 24 months to decide what I want to do with my GI Bill. And then later, about 12 years later, I found out I had 10 years to use it. And I was like, fudge cake. I was like so pissed about that. I was upset.
You
So
were on the 14.4 though, right?
I was on the what?
You were on the 14.4 plan where it was like 14,400, or did
No, it
you
was
have more?
15.5, I think it was. Oh, might have been 14.4. But I
So
think they upgraded that though for all of us at a certain time.
gotcha.
That was when. No, I think it got moved up. I'm not sure. It might have been 14.4. I keep remembering 15 for some reason. It's like
I
50,000 a year for up to 4 years or something. Yeah.
I remember how I thought going in that that was a large amount of money.
We all did, right? Yeah, I'm gonna get a GI Bill. Yeah. Yeah.
$14,400. That's like,
Never seen that much money in my life. Yeah.
right.
And I get that for school. Yeah. So
I bought a car with my enlistment bonus, and it was funny because the car payment was, so I was only making after taxes $603 a month. That was a real
right.
number. Living in the barracks, eating at the chow hall, but my car payment was $257 a month. My insurance was $303 a month.
You had 97 bucks. Well, yeah, no, less than that.
Less than that. It was like 40.
35, 40 bucks.
Yeah.
Oh, it's gas and beer. Come on.
It wasn't even quite beer though. So we were like donating plasma to get the extra money for, for beer and, you know,
This goes into why you got the extra job on the side, huh?
oh yeah, yeah. So we would go out and donate plasma just to get money to go to the bar.
Right.
And we would go to the bar right afterwards,
Yeah.
which is a dangerous formula of donating plasma and then going out and just tying one on. But good thing, I was in Oklahoma for most of everything, and they had really bad beer, so
Is
I
that
ended
Fort Wood? No. What's in
Fort
Oklahoma?
Fort Sill.
Fort Sill.
Yeah.
Fort Sill.
So I did
If I
Fort in Kentucky and Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri and Fort Sill, but Fort Sill was pretty much home for a major part of my time in the Army. And they have,
part of my military time after I got off the George Washington, I was fortunate enough to go back to my home city, and I did 3 years at a MEPS. And I was at the Miami MEPS, and it was really cool because it was a mixed command, right? Our commanding officer was Coast Guard. Our first officer was Army, and then later it was Navy, and then it was our first sergeant was a hardcore. God, he was a prick. Hardcore Marine Corps E8 that was on his twilight tour, and he did not give a flying fudge cake. He was a prick. I mean, we would have to be at work 6:37 in the morning. He'd be gone by 9:30, and he'd have his fishing gear on, his fishing rod. I'll be all mother or whatever, just get the job done. He always had that cowl on his face, and I was like, but I learned a lot. Military was great. I think everybody should do it.
I actually had a pretty decent argument with one of the extreme liberals yesterday about mandatory enlistment. And
I saw that. I'm kind of 50-50 with both of you. I would say that.
it just amazes me. And I'm not actually in favor of mandatory enlistment because I,
because the guy who you were talking to was a good conversation. He actually made valid points in some
yeah,
of it. He was making a good point. At first, when his beginning comment was like, slavery, I was like, what the hell? I didn't understand that. And then I was like, okay, I understand his taking away someone's individuality or whatever for a couple of years and whatnot, but I mean, it's like, and then your point was, but people don't understand what the cost of freedom is.
mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to give up yourself to learn a skill, which the military is. No matter what you do in the military, I don't care if you're a ground pounder or infantryman, you're doing a skill that someone else doesn't have the balls to do.
But not even, my point is not even military service. What if you were required for 2 years to, almost like Sweden does it, where it's not necessarily military, but you're donating 2 years of your life for pay, right? So it isn't indentured servitude. It isn't, well, maybe it is, but it isn't slavery. You're getting paid to do it. But what's wrong with, hey, you have to choose. Do you want to join the military? You have to do one of these things. You can join the military. You could join the park system. You could join, you know what I mean? And create this pride within, this, build up that culture so that maybe they're, more reluctant to throw their McDonald's bag out the window of their car, just destroying the environment because they don't have any respect.
Right.
for what they have. And that's kind of the point that I'm going down, or that road that I'm going down, that I don't think people get.
Yeah. I
It,
still wouldn't relate it, even going to the military. I mean, even if the USMC stands for "You Suckers Miss Christmas," doesn't always mean that it's slavery.
sure, sure.
Or
Uh,
Army ain't ready for the Marines yet, right?
right. Yeah. 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 I always tell everybody, what U.S. Army stands for backwards.
Why am I?
Yes,
No.
my retarded ass signed up.
Yeah. Yes, my retarded ass signed up. Yeah.
Yep, ain't ready to be.
Military days.
But I
Yeah.
think,
I miss them.
I think there would be more pride, more, it just seems to me like, and I know we're kind of going backwards, but we just live here. We're living in this selfish and entitled um, place that nobody cares about anybody but themselves here, right? If I were on fire in the middle of downtown St. Paul, I doubt anybody would piss on me to I mean, they would pull out their phones and record it to try and see how many likes they could get on Facebook.
And that's a sad state of affairs. That really is sad, where, not being willing to help your fellow man, I can't understand where they come out like that. And I mean, it's like the images of seeing the BLM people throwing paint on an old lady's face, and she's supporting them, and it's like, what
Mhm,
the heck? She had a BLM sign, but she said, don't destroy the police station, whatever it was, and
mhm,
she's like, I'm with you, but unfortunately to me, I think she was trying not to be canceled in a way, it's like, it was
sure.
a little tiny representation saying, hey, I don't think you should do this, but I support this. And then the person threw paint on her and all that other stuff, and I couldn't watch the video, but
It was horrific.
it's just, where does this thinking come from? That's the thing, that's the thing to find out. I mean, if people can't sit down and discuss these things, it's going to continue. I mean, if you can't sit down and try to rationalize, compromise is not a bad thing.
Right.
Everything in life is compromise. If you get married, you have to let the wife use the bathroom when you can't. I mean, it's like, life is compromise. You can't always have it your way. You can't. And people have to stop doing that. I mean, we have to, if it was up to me, I'd bring back corporal punishment in schools. I think that was fine. I got paddled in school if I did something wrong. My parents called, did something wrong, or we got suspended or whatever. I mean, these kind of things where, oh, we can't do that now. I mean, it
It,
was so bad when my kid was growing up. My son went to school in his first grade year, and the teacher said he needs a calculator. I said, what for? And he said, well, so for math class. I says, but aren't you going to teach him his math? And she's like, well, yeah, but it's used for checking his math. I said, well, aren't you going to check his math? And she's like, I was like arguing. And then I was like, then the other thing was is that he had to bring 6 boxes of Kleenex, soap, 6 things of soap. And he had to, I was like, what? How much soap is my one child going to go through during the school year? And how much money are you getting from my property taxes that this is not a school supply. My son doesn't write his ABCs using soap.
mhm,
My son doesn't need Kleenex to write ABCs. Well, some people in class aren't fortunate enough to have the money to buy all the school supplies. I said, well, those aren't really school supplies. I mean, I'll give my son a couple pencils. And if you, along with me, help my child understand the term sharing and being able to loan out a pencil for a few minutes if Johnny forgot his, then I'm with you on that 100%. And I'll give my son 10 pencils he can take, and we'll teach him how to share. But
mhm.
don't tell me that he has to go to the classroom and dump all his stuff in the middle of a pile and teach him how to be a socialist when he's 5 years old. I don't want that, and you check his math. You're the freaking teacher, I mean,
It-
these things, it's right there. It's in the education system. A huge part of it is there.
yeah, that's where it's starting. And I'll share this with you. My son, so I was a full time single parent, and I think it was his seventh. I think it was his seventh grade year, or maybe it was eighth grade.
Hmm.
He came home with this uh, parent teacher contract.
Parent
Okay.
teacher contract.
Yeah. So I'm working in corporate America, and I'm full-time single parent. He was kind of on his own. I mean, he'd hang out with a friend at a friend's house after school until I got home from work, which was just a few doors down from us. And so anyways, I get this contract and I'm like, yeah, that ain't happening. Right. I mean, never is a teacher going to tell me how I need to parent. And
Yeah, yeah, don't. It should be the other way around. That's part of it. Also, it should be the other way around. You should be able to tell the teacher, say, "Hey, look, if my son gets out of place, you don't look like that big of a woman. Smack him across the head." It's like,
yeah. So
give him a smack on the ass. You know what? It works for me. Oh, you're abusing your child. It's like, ah, it's like,
so my son comes home with a reminder letter, and I'm
mhm.
like, okay, reminder letter. I said, let's have fun with this. So the next day I wrote up a contract of my own. I'll sign yours if you sign mine.
There you go.
Let's go ahead and play this game. But he came home with his grade card and he got an F in that class. And the only reason he got an F was because that parent teacher contract represented half of his grade.
That's ridiculous. That
And I
that is
came
uncalled for.
unglued. I
No, I
mean,
would too. I would too. That
so the next day I go in, I mean, literally, Dad, my kid is very soft spoken, and I don't know where he gets it from because his mother and I are very outspoken, but I tell everybody he got the best of all of our traits because when he was born, I thought we were based on hers and my personalities, we were going to have the spawn of Satan, right? But my kid turned out to be wonderful. And the next morning, he's like, "Dad, don't make a big deal out of this." And I was like, "F that, buddy!" Right? I'm going into Army drill sergeant mode, and we're gonna do some wall to wall counseling at this school, right?
come to Jesus moment.
Yeah, come to Jesus meeting. So I go in and I said, "All right, buddy," and he's like, "Dad, don't make a big deal out of this." And I was like, "No, it is a big deal,
It is.
right?
It is.
It is
It's
a big
a huge
deal."
deal.
That this teacher, and I have a hard time not using the F word in a very inflammatory way. I think that's the army in me. But I walked in and I was like, "Who the F is this teacher?" Into the principal's office. And I said, "Who the F is this teacher? Where the F do they get off trying to think that half of my kid's grade is going to be based on not even anything that's in his control? And what kind of effing school are you running here?" And this Principal Zuzek, I hope he's retired at this point. He was a wonderful man. But he's sitting back in his chair, right? Like, oh my God. Then he leans forward and he said, "The whole school can hear you. We're in the middle of doing morning announcements. Could you just wait about 5 minutes?" Oh shit!
Oops.
But
Oops. Yeah.
at that point, he drugged the teacher in. Actually had somebody go replace the teacher to bring her. I want to know who this person is. I want to know where the f they think that they're going to tell me how to be a parent.
Mm,
And then she was actually dumb enough that she tried to stand her ground.
mm.
And with me, what people don't see from social media is that I actually bottle a whole bunch up, right? And I may
Right.
come off as brash and everything else, but that's really just to push away the people that I don't want to surround myself with, anyways. Me in real life, I'll bend over backwards, day after day after day after day, and I'll stand in line to get kicked in the teeth over and over and over again. But you don't want to be that person that
No, you don't.
is at the end of that rope, and she found herself at the end of that fuse, if you will.
You reminded me of something that happened, like where my dad had to come to school because he was pissed off because I got in trouble. I was in third grade, and not trying to brag or anything, but I was in gifted class, geek, right? And then so I was in class one day, and my teacher, and she was Hispanic. She was great teacher, Miss Mendez. I still remember her. It's third grade, so she's probably like 80 now. Okay, so anyways, she I was doing some writing, and my dad is a printer, right? So my dad was a printer, so he knows how things are supposed to appear, and he was a typesetter. So back in the day, that was when you used a typesetting machine, was like this huge 8 foot long machine before we had computers that would manually put out each letter onto a piece of film that you would then turn into a plate so you could print it. So he knew all about prose, about how stuff should be worded, how stuff he wouldn't always correct people's grammar per se, but he knew about that. And he had always taught me, when you have a word and it's too long to fit on the line, and you want to keep everything same on the side, you have to dash after the closest syllable you can find.
Mhm.
So or after the consonant of the closest syllable, right before the next vowel. And I was like, okay. And I was young. I remembered this from the time I was first grade, second grade. Something he taught me because he was a printer. He wanted to show me his print shop and all that. So we go into class one day, and then we're doing this writing thing, and I wrote some word like drop, DROP dash PED, or whatever it was on the next line. And she said, you have to put a dash on the next line. And I was like, no, you don't. And so she argued with me, and I was adamant. I was like, no, my dad's a printer. He told me, blah, blah, blah. My dad knows how to do this writing. Well, I'm a teacher, and blah, 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 like this. So we went to the principal's office. They called my dad. Dad had to come in just because of a little hyphen. And the principal told the teacher right in front of my dad, you're wrong. Not in front of the classroom, but, and it humbled my teacher, but she really never treated me well after that, really, to be honest. You
Well,
can
my
understand
third
she was
grade teacher,
embarrassed.
if this makes you feel any better, I was not in gifted classes.
Mm.
I think in the third grade I was into girls, and everybody knew it.
Well, it was only third grade. I wasn't like gifted every year or whatever. I did some testing. It was really good. So
But my teacher actually built a plywood box around my desk and put my desk in the corner for the entire year. Her name was Mrs. Kettinger or Kettinger or something like that. But
wow.
I remember I'd walk in and ask her where her broomstick was parked. I mean, I was just a terrible, terrible, terrible
So
child.
what you're saying? You've been a prick a long time, huh?
Yeah, but not really. I mean, it's just I've always been in people who know me personally know this is I have always been the guy who stands up for everybody else. That
That's good. There's
at
nothing wrong
all
with that.
costs. So in my mind, she was the bully. And I mean, I got along with literally every teacher in my entire schooling process, with the exception of her, I think, my third grade teacher. Second grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, the whole way up through. I can't think of a single teacher that I had that I didn't like other than her. But she was actually so mean, she was threatening to send me back to second grade. It was, it was just so,
I'm gonna kick you so hard you go back to second grade.
and that was the year that. But I've always been that person that just, I'm a dick to all the right people in the end. It's one of the fun stories, which is a terrible story to tell, but there was this kid named Daniel Shoup, and third grade. First time
Mhm.
I ever got suspended from school was the second grade, which that's a fun story too. But in the third grade, we were out on the recess, and they had one of those tire swings on the chains,
Right.
and I got in trouble for this. To this day, I still don't understand why I was the one who got in trouble for everything. But the other sixth graders, so I'm in the third grade, and the sixth graders are pushing Danny Shoup around on this tire swing until they made him sick and he'd give up his lunch money, right? And I was like, F that. I mean, I didn't think like that back then, but I just walked up and started nut punching the other sixth graders.
Right. Right.
I'm like, you don't get to pick on him, it just, but anyways, I got suspended for that. And I'm like, but I did the right thing. I don't know. Different time back then, but
I
um,
got suspended for 3 days for punching a wall. That's because the guy moved out of the way.
yeah, I could see that though. I mean,
They
that,
sent both of us out of the class because we were fighting in class. Not physically fighting in class, but then we went out and the teacher said, "Go stand out in the hall, both of you." And we're sitting right next to me. Then he starts mouthing off again. I turned, look right at him. I said, "Dude, say another word." And he said something. And he said it. I threw the punch and he moved out of the way just at the very last second. I smacked my hand in the wall. Teacher heard it in the classroom. She said, "Both of you to the principal's office." Got suspended 3 days. I don't know if
what,
it's suspended, but detention hall for 3 days or something.
did you ever get spanked in school?
No, I didn't get spanked. I didn't get spanked. I knew a lot of my partners in crime did, but no.
Yeah.
I usually got away with it. So
I mean, I got spanked a lot in school by the principal. And it was funny because I mean it was literally funny because Mr. Mangold he'd pull out this board or paddle or whatever you want to call it. It looked
did it
like
have holes in it so you could slide through the air quicker?
no, it really
That's
didn't.
the
But it
principal
looked
at the
like
school I went to had. It was like what do you call it? One of them cricket
yeah,
bats or whatever, but it
it,
had holes in it. And we
it,
always asked, why does it have holes in it? He always said, because that way it's less wind and it hits your ass quicker, you know?
the problem though was Mr. Mangold hit like a little bitch. I mean, he would spank me, and I would laugh.
But I
Okay,
think it goes towards. I think what happened is both you and I'm assuming you're not too far away from my age. I'm 53 now. 53. Oh crap.
yeah. So I'm
53.
9 years younger.
Right. So and so we're right around the precipice of where, you know, our youth was still kind of strong in some ways. You know, after the Vietnam War, we had a nice period of no real conflicts, just a bunch of idiots in the military or in the government. And then, you know, we had the Reagan years, which I loved, but I loved after when I learned more about it. But, you know, and then, you know, our military years. But I think our youth in elementary school was probably that point in time just before the, you know, late 70s, early 80s, where things started to go to shit, you know. I mean, it's like where you couldn't spank your kids anymore if somebody saw you, disciplining your children, that became a crime. You know, you
But
couldn't fly a flag in a homeowners association and
yeah, I think that
all
was
this kind of
more.
stuff.
I think that was more mid. I think that was more early '90s though. And the
Yeah,
only
I do. I agree with that. But what I'm saying is I think that your principle hit like a bitch because it was getting to a point where maybe some people were paying attention. You shouldn't hit my child. You know,
well,
I don't
that,
hit them. You know, right.
that's what I was getting at though. I mean I'm talking like second grade or whatever. He's spanking me, and every time he'd spank me, I'd giggle. Okay, which pissed him off. And then finally, I think it was like the sixth grade. Because
Mm.
we went into middle school in the seventh grade, but Mr. Mangle realized that regardless of anything, it was almost embarrassing for him to spank me at that point, even though that was the action.
You know, that middle school thing, that was that was one part where it started.
Well, so let me finish this though, because finally he asked me, and he's like, "Why do you laugh every time I'm spanking you?" Because I mean, I was not a good child. I mean, I just was. It's not that I was a bad child. I was very rowdy and
Mm.
always like kind of an action junkie where I wanted to be playing sports and doing whatever, and I would wind up getting in trouble because of this, that, or whatever. So finally, he asked me, and he sits me down. And he says, uh, "Mister Blah blah blah, why is it that you find it funny when I spank you?" And I was like, "Because my dad gives it to me a whole lot worse." than
That's true.
right?
That's true. That's
So when I
true.
when I told my son about that, he was like, "So Grandpa abused you as a child?" No,
Exactly.
he
See,
did.
that's the mentality. Yeah, but your son knew, right? That was something he should pay attention to. Whereas when we were children, we were cut off from that kind of stuff. You know, I mean, there's a lot of times where there'd be a parent teacher conference and the kids would be at home, you know? I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my mom and dad would say, "Oh, well, you're with the babysitter. We're going to the parent teacher conference." I'll be like, "Okay," you know? And then later on, it'd be like, we'd be more involved. The kids would be like, hey, they don't want, we don't get spanked. That's abuse. We can say something about it. And it became like where now the education system has learned how to break up the nuclear family. That's what it is.
Mhm.
In my opinion, it's like, it's just the little things. It's the little tiny things.
Let's pinpoint that because that happened.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, and you can tell me I'm full of shit, but I believe that that happened when we were both in the military. And I think it started right at the top with the idea of, and I don't remember who the Secretary of Education was or any of that. Something happened and we missed it because
I
we were both in the
I
military.
agree. I agree. I agree.
I
And it affected us because we started recognizing it more because we were in the military, which is, for the most part, most military people, maybe not as much today, but at least when we were in, most military people were, after their military time, became by kind of default a little bit more conservative, a little bit more, would tend to vote a little to the right or more moderate, but I think that the that time frame, until I had my son, like I said, when I saw that they were doing all this to my son and telling my son that, Dad, I have this list, and it was a huge list of school supplies, and I'm like, what the hell happened to pencils, crowns, and paper? I
Mhm.
can get you some notebooks. I can get you pencil, crown. It's kind of interesting, going off on a tangent about Japan here, is that these kids, when they start school, there's these special backpacks that are the rage here in Japan. All little children carry their backpacks, and these backpacks are $500. They're thick, like super durable rawhide leather, like the stuff that doesn't bend that you find like on the top of a saddle of a horse. And that the backpack is like curved like this, and these kids cart away, and it's like, yeah, like, I know you can't see this, but it's probably maybe about a foot thick, a foot or more thick, so they can put all their books in it and it'll never break. And they carry that backpack with them, like from kindergarten all the way up to like third, fourth, maybe fifth grade. And it's amazing to see these kids in Japan, like with all that stuff. But
So
going back, go ahead.
I want to pinpoint because I actually, the first time I noticed what I would call cancel culture happening
Mm-hmm.
was in 1998. And I remember this because I was still in the army and I had this. Hillary, when she was in the White House, that's my joke. The first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw it, one, we had female soldiers introduced to our unit, and we
Right.
were, which was weird. And I remembered that happened. It started in '97, and then all of a sudden these rapid changes started happening. So now I had female soldiers, but they weren't really my soldiers because if we were deployed, we were a forward operating unit, they would fall back to brigade level in a support role. And I had this,
Right. They weren't full combat yet.
right, but they weren't even, they were just attached to our unit. They weren't actually in our unit, if that made any sense. Or if
Oh, I
that,
understand. I understand the military like structure and whatnot. So yeah, that was, yeah, I see what the play was. The play was is they could say in the media that military females were in combat now, even though
sure.
they weren't necessarily in combat. They were attached to a combat unit. But when the combat unit was forward deployed, they stayed back and sent you your new boondockers and your skivvies and stuff like that. So
Yeah. So I remember I had this terrible, terrible soldier. Her name was Private Scott. And
well,
I would
Scott's a good name. What's wrong with that? Come on.
I would literally dox her at this point. This is how much I hated this soldier. But we had, I had all of these different female soldiers that showed up, and I'm like, I remember thinking, what the f do I do with, I remember going to my first sergeant. I'm like, what do you expect me to do with this? Right? I mean, and it was just so, and so we that fight started in '97.
You gotta talk about the disclosure though. It's not like you're trying to mock women being in the military per se, but
No,
it's like it was a shock to the system for you.
it wasn't even that it was a shock to the system. It was the absolute incapability of them
Mm,
to do the jobs that they were attached to do. Okay.
mm,
And that's not a knock against women, because when you're dealing with, it was hard for the men to do it. So when you just talked about physical ability, that I was, and I would have been kicked out today, because I always talked about how, back then I said the female soldiers in our position through attachment were half of, I needed two to get one job done. Okay. Because a starter for a tank weighs 250 pounds,
right.
which is a one soldier job to change a starter in the army, right? Or
Right.
maybe it's 150 pounds. I don't remember. They were super heavy,
Right.
but they actually attach these female soldiers saying, well, they can do everything that you can do. And I'm like, no, 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 I can barely do it.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I can't.
Um,
What do you mean they can do it?
yeah. And it was like this forced acceptance. And so we went through these periods, but, um, and I got into a lot of trouble, but, the straw that broke the camel's back was, everything was revolving this Private Scott, which
Mm,
was just, she was the bane of my existence. And the one day I was yelling at everybody in formation, right? Everybody's at parade rest, and I'm just tearing the shit out of them, right? Because they had all screwed up. I mean, we literally had failed a Class A inspection,
mm.
and that's the time that I mean,
That should be the simplest one, right?
yeah, we failed a Class A inspection, and I have everybody out in the, I don't, like, it was like a little courtyard outside of the motor pool, and I'm just tearing into their ass. I'm in full drill sergeant mode, and Private Scott breaks the position of parade rest and whips out this thing, and she says, "You can't yell at me because blah blah blah."
Oh, was it the pink card thing?
The stress card.
Yeah, you know what? I heard about those. I never had to deal with them personally while I was in.
That was
And
1998.
yeah, that was around that time. Yeah, that
And I was like, what the F is this? I mean, I may have been in full drill sergeant mode beforehand, but I had crawled out of my skin and dwarfed into something that I couldn't even describe to this day. And I walked over and I grabbed this card, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, what the F is this? Blah, blah, blah. And I ripped it up and I threw it right in her face, right?
I heard about this in boot camp happening after, yeah, probably right around that time that they would give pink or blue cards or something like that to different, to not only just the females, to everybody. And then, like I forget what they were, but pink and blue cards, that's what I just remember them called. You
Okay.
know what I call them? PU55Y cards.
Well, I will be honest with you. I almost lost rank over that incident. No kidding.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was the moment that I realized, because I got out the next year
Yeah.
and I said, this is an army I don't recognize anymore. That this is an army of fairness. At some point that, you know,
The army can't be fair. It can't. The
yeah,
military can't be fair. It
the
has to
Navy
be.
could be fair.
No, none of them can.
If you think about what's fair to people, potentially they're going to get their battle buddy or their fellow soldier killed.
Yeah.
In all fairness, and I
Yeah.
used to say that,
Pull out that card when the freaking enemy has a scope on you. No, no. Pull out the card. Wait a second.
yeah, don't shoot. I have a card. We have to take a 10-minute timeout.
Oh man, the timeout stuff. I remember that. It is around this time. It is around this time. 98, 99. And who was president then? Hmm.
Bill Clinton.
You know what? The funniest thing is, I remember when the hearings were going on about Bill Clinton, and my son was, let's see, if it's 97, my son would have been 6 years old. And I was watching the news one day, and my son says, "Why is the president on TV so much, Dad? Why is the president so much on TV?" And I said, "Well, He lied. He lied?
Hmm.
He shouldn't be the president. And I was like, you know what, kid? That's pretty sharp on you. And it just dawned on me so simplistic that my little 6-year-old could, and I didn't even tell him what he lied about. I didn't say anything. I think I actually explained to him. I said, well, some people accused him of doing something, then he said he didn't, and then they found out that he did. And then my son said to me, you mean he lied? My son could figure that out. He's 6 years old. I'm like, why can't these Twinkies figure that stuff out? The media is, this media that we have is so bad, so terrible.
I
You
think
know,
that started the same time.
I think it was around that time as well.
That it
It depends on what the word is. It was like, come on, Billary.
it goes back to I always tell this joke. Do you know what politics and the media have in common?
What?
Neither lets the truth get in the way of telling a great story.
Yeah. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Jeez.
Yeah. I think all of that started because if you remember back in, I think it was 97, was the impeachment back in 97?
I
Or
think it was around there. It's around that time.
that was the cover up. Monica Lewinsky was the cover up because he was under investigation for selling trade secrets to China. Do you remember that?
Clinton himself?
Yes.
I don't remember that part.
He had it was I forget all of it, but all of it happened right around the same time. So we had Bosnia, the trade secrets to China, and impeachment, all in Monica Lewinsky, all happening in the same thing. And I said, wow, I wasn't even political back then, but
Me neither. I wasn't either.
I was like, this is happening for a reason. I remember literally the only time I watched TV, I was on sick call the one day, waiting for my doctor's appointment because I had the flu. And I was watching the news and I was like, wow, all that shit's going on right now. I would have never known.
It was 98. 98 he was impeached. Yeah. Right around that time. That is true. And like I told you, 1995, I think it was 95, was the anniversary, D-Day anniversary. And so Clinton, the USS George Washington, my aircraft carrier, was the carrier that was designated as the representation of the United States for D-Day. And we went over to in Normandy. We went to Normandy and we went to the English Channel. And there was like 10, 15, 20,000 boats there. The QE2, the Queen was on board her ship, not the QE2, she was on the Victoria. I think it's a Victoria, her little private yacht. And then Clinton, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, all of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, George Stephanopoulos, who was the guy from CNN, the black guy, remember him? He died.
Mm, I'm not good with that time.
Yeah, and then D.D. Myers was his press secretary at the time. They all came on board, his whole entourage and Secret Service. By the way, Bill Clinton's Secret Service, his main Secret Service person was a female. She was good looking too. Makes me wonder. So, but because when they came on the ship, they were going to go up and speak with the admiral up, which I worked in the island because our radar system was in the island structure of the aircraft carrier, and right above the deck below my radar system was the captain's quarters, his room, and the deck above was the admiral's quarters. So when the admiral, he's in charge of the fleet when we're out. So his was above, and then the deck above that was the bridge to the ship. So Bill Clinton and his whole entourage were going to take a tour of the bridge, and we're all in our dress whites and everything, our nice little, Cracker Jack sailor caps and everything. And so Secret Service comes up, and it's this lady, and she comes up and she says, you have to keep your door closed while the president comes up. And we're like, oh, okay, like this. And I said, when's he coming up? He said, he's probably going to come up in about 5 minutes. And I was like, okay, cool. So we closed the door for like 2 or 3 minutes. Then we opened it back up. So screw that. We're going to see the president, man. Hey, we're going to see the president. So they come up the ladder on the ship. It's called the ladder. And they come up the ladder there, and here comes Clinton. And I pop my head out the door. I say, hey, Mr. President, could we get a picture? And I wasn't political at all or anything at that time. And I was thinking to myself, how many people could say they took a picture with the president?
Sure.
And he's like, sure, no problem. I'll come right over there. Because it's like 10 feet away and he had to walk by us anyways.
Hmm.
So he's there. And then the Secret Service pops her head in the door. She's like, two friendlies or three friendlies. She's like whispering into her little microphone on her wrist and stuff and saying it's all clear for him to just stop in for a second. And I had a picture. For the life of me, I don't know what happened to that picture. My ex-wife has it somewhere in a photo album, but it was a old camera I had, and I had black and white film in it at the time, and took that picture. And he took a picture with the other guys in our space, and we thought that was cool. I shook his hand, and I was like, I shook the president's hand. I felt really good at that time, and I wasn't political at all. And then so he goes up, and like 2 minutes after that, we still have the door open. Secret Service says, well, these guys didn't listen to my rule. So, we have the door open, and then General Shalikashvili, who was the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the time, he came up, and we were like, General, or sir, hello, sir. It's like, what do you call him, sir, just sir is fine. And so he walked up, and then like 30 seconds after him, here comes Hillary. And I swear to God, nobody believes me when I tell them this, but her thighs and her calves on her legs are exactly the same size. She looks like a Minecraft character. I don't know if you know the game Minecraft. Everybody's got like these square rectangles for legs
Like
and arms.
legs.
Yeah, like Lego legs. I mean, her legs. I noticed that. She's wearing like this dress, and it's like she's walking, and it's like it's really hard for her to get the stairs. So I don't know. She might have been sick at the time, but
Hmm.
we were like, hello, Miss Clinton. We're all still giddy because we met the president and everything. Hello, Miss Clinton. And she like looked at all of us and gave us the evil eye.
Yeah.
Just kept walking up the stairs. I was like, so I realized, I was like, wow, she doesn't like us, or she doesn't like the military. What is it, And I couldn't tell, And then later on, my roommate at the time, who was living in our house with us, he was one of the radar technicians, a civilian that worked on installing the radar on our ship. He told me, he said, I'm not going to shake your hand. I said, why? I said, you shook Bill Clinton's hand. He's a scumbag. I was like, what do you mean? And then he started telling me about all these things, and I started getting involved with politics. And that's how I got deep into politics and everything, and became a conservative, I guess. And, he showed,
It,
Jesus
it,
to me at this time, or whatever kind of thing,
what's funny was, so I've actually avoided politics for a long time, and in just recently did I get back into it, or just get into politics, because I've always
Same with
been.
me in many ways. I was out of it. I was big into it. I got out for a while, and then I got back into it.
But
I'm the
I
black sheep of the family because I'm a conservative. So
I've never cared
yeah,
until recently, because for the, I don't know, I've always been non-political, and it for me it's kind of tough, because I come in, and and everybody said, well, what are you? And I don't know, I'm an American.
American. Yeah,
Well,
exactly. That's
what are,
it.
what are your political views? I said, well, I just want everybody to be able to get high and carry a gun to their gay friend's wedding. I really don't care.
Yeah, right.
You
Yeah,
know, they're like, well, how do you feel about this? And they're always trying to put you in these boxes.
exactly. And put a
Are you,
label on you, or
yeah, are you a Republican or a Democrat? And I'm like, neither. Well, no, you have to be one. No, I really don't have to be either. I promise.
no, you don't have to be either.
And it's just so tough. So I always tell everybody now, I'm a devout independent, like a devout Catholic, right? I'm a devout independent, but I lean towards the right. And you've seen some of the, I mean, and everybody says, well, how do you feel about Trump? I said, Trump has enough. I have enough confidence in Trump at this point that I'm going to vote against the other person, whoever that person is.
Yeah, whoever it is, right? It's like I think though, along the lines, I understand your point, and I probably say, I know my family won't agree with me when I say this, but I probably agree with you. I think I'm more libertarian on many of my views about certain things. I don't care if somebody wants to smoke a joint in their house or have a gay friend over. I don't care. Go on, do your thing. you don't have to tell me I have to like it or I have to agree with it.
Sure.
That's the biggest issue is they're like telling you you must accept homosexuality. No, I don't really have to accept it. I mean, I don't care for it. I mean, if you want to do that, hey, you know, go flip your skirt. I don't care. It's I'm like let it go like that. But I do think that there are points in my life where I would say, from that point with the Clinton thing, that I became very staunchly conservative to a point. But I think over time, I've been able to listen and open my eyes and say, some of this is okay. It's not so bad. I mean, I don't care, but don't put it down my throat. Don't say, I should have told you that the biggest thing that really is my biggest pet peeve is this I have higher morality than you do kind of attitude,
Sure.
and I'm like, I I abhor that,
Yeah, well, and that's, I tell everybody that I don't think I'm better than anybody in this world, but I sure as hell don't think anybody's better than me.
Yeah, that's one way to think of it,
And that causes a lot of problems in today's society, in today's, especially Minnesota, right? Which you've seen my nicknames, Marana Soda. I call them Mintards. I mean, I have so many terrible names. That did you ever hear about the Home Depot thing that happened with me here?
No, I didn't hear about that.
So
Are you
Minnesota,
gonna tell me? Come on, tell me, Bradley.
yes. So Minnesota is extremely. I mean, they're beyond. There's some version of like what was that show, The Twilight Zone? When
But
it
you're
comes,
in you're in what, the suburbs of Minneapolis, somewhere around that about?
yeah, St. Paul. I live a
St.
mile
Paul.
away
Okay.
from the capital. Very urban.
How far from where George Floyd had his incident?
About 6 miles away,
Okay, about
and
6 miles.
the rioting and everything got to about a mile and a half away from our house. That was kind of scary,
Mm.
because you could see it was like standing in front of a big fire when you were out. They were just burning the city down. But I had this thing happen, and this, I always shop at Home Depot because Home Depot gives veterans a 10% discount. I'm not trying to plug them, right? But that's just always my thing. So
Yay, veterans.
yeah, so if they appreciate us, I'll appreciate them. But I went into Home Depot to get we were remodeling our kitchen, so I needed more door handles, and I'm standing in line, and this young gal, I don't know, college age girl, I pull out my military ID, and she said, thank you for your service, for the discount. And all of a sudden this woman behind me said, something about we could balance our budget if we would just fire all you baby killers, and spit on me. Okay, that's Minnesota.
Yeah, it
No
sucks.
shit. I
That
mean,
sucks.
and I just sunk. I mean, I didn't even have an argument. I never had a conversation with this lady.
Right.
All I did was show my military ID to the cashier, and that caused this irate piece of garbage
Uh,
behind me to want to push whatever her political views were.
no, her higher morality. That's the feeling that she has this, I'm better than you kind of feeling, It's like,
Right. And
eh,
you are wrong and I am right. Right. And I never even turned around at that point. And I looked at this cashier and she was horrified. She didn't know what was going to happen. I'm pretty sure she thought I was going to punch this lady. Right. But I looked at her.
rightfully so.
Yeah. And I said, ma'am, I said, do you have a paper towel or something? Right. And she said that she had this thing like she would use to clean off the counter or the belt or whatever. She said, but this has like stuff on it. And I said, but it's better than the stuff that's on me right now. And like the cleaning stuff. And I wiped it off and I said, you have a wonderful day.
And now you have cancer on your back, right?
Yeah. Probably I had, COVID or something at that point. But I walked
Right.
out and I was like, wow. I said, here's the thing. When people ask me about Minnesota now, I tell them it's beautiful. It's a beautiful place until you meet the people.
Mm.
and it's one of the ugliest places on earth. And I've been to some really shitty places.
Yeah, it's
It,
like California is like one of the most beautiful states in the United States. It really is. I mean, I've driven through a lot of California, and I think it's a beautiful state, but I would never live there.
because
Those
of the people,
because of freaking people, yeah,
right?
because of the people, and I'm like it's sad though. From my point of view, living in Japan here, it's like people don't understand. I get this retort all the time. Oh, you're in Japan. What do you care? Well, I'm like, my family still lives over in the U.S. My kids still live there, and anything you idiots push through is going to affect my family, my kids. And what are you going to do? You're going to start blocking my kids from talking to their own parents and stuff, which, well, kind of they do in so many ways. And my kids are swayed by this right now. I mean, my kids are influenced by this stuff, and I see what they're putting on their Facebook and stuff like that. And I'm not against what they believe in. I I never pushed I don't think I did. I don't think I ever pushed my conservatism on them or being a Republican or anything like that. I just taught them to be, respectful of other people. Look, be respectful of people. Don't spit on the guy in the Home Depot line. You
Mhm.
know, stuff like that. If you see something done, if you see a guy on fire in Minneapolis, go pee on him or whatever. So do
Don't pull out your
something.
phone and
Don't yeah, don't pull out your phone and say, "Hey, this is going on my Instagram."
right.
Like that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just, but people are ignorant. I mean, people are so ignorant. People don't know. People hear one story. It's like I read a great article today, and it was so easy. It's from that website makeuseof.com. And they send out these little handy guides about this, that, and the other thing. And the thing was about fake news. And I was like, all right, let me check this out. Let me see what they say. How to avoid fake news. And I thought it was a cool article. So I started reading through the things. I was like, yeah, this makes sense. This was written in April of this year. And it's like, I mean, these kind of things, it's sad. It's so sad. These entitled people who are ignorant, the media bias, the cancel culture. I don't know. I wish people would. Japan is a very pacifist country. So they don't like war. My wife, I mean, she's a few years older than me, I'll be honest. And she, for the longest time, did not even believe Japan had a military. They do. Oh, it's not the military. It's not the military. Oh, what do you mean it's not the military? Well, it's the self-defense forces.
Right.
I'm like, that's the military. And she didn't believe me. And I was like, you have an air force, you have a navy, you have ships, you have an army. And the way they do it in Japan is because they don't want to ostracize anybody, is that when they do their operations on the weekend, they're kind of like weekend warriors. And for anybody who doesn't know who's watching this, weekend warriors are usually the reservists who go once a month to their reserve thing and they act like they're the military for 2 days of the month and then they go back home, right? So that's the way it is in Japan. They practice their stuff on the weekends. If you go driving in Japan in the countryside, you'll see military convoys going here, there, and the other. First time we were driving around with my wife and she saw all those green army trucks, and they're green, just like our army trucks, Humvees and everything, big, rocket launchers, radar trucks, everything the army has and everything. And they're driving on the regular highways to go in to do their ops, right?
Mhm.
My wife's like, what are these guys? And I was like, that's your military. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, it's kind of hidden that they have a military, but they are a very pacifist country. And in World War II, after World War II, MacArthur came in and he was the supreme commander of the fleet and he was the supreme commander of the Pacific. He was actually the acting kind of like governor of Japan in Tokyo after World War II to get things back into shape, so to speak. And Japan in 1947 wrote their constitution. It's in many ways, very similar to our constitution. It was modeled kind of like off of that. There's freedom of speech here. I can have a beer in my hand, walk down the street, and nobody's going to say anything.
So I'm going to ask you. I always ask one tough question,
All right.
and you just triggered that question.
Triggered.
Yeah, triggered because that's kind of what it talks about. So vet to vet, I think for me, because I find myself to be very pacifist as well, post military. So the one thing that I learned in the military is that I don't, one of my soldiers and best friends died on the USS Cole. We spent our nearly our entire Army career together. When I got out of the Army, when we both got out of the Army, I chose to be a civilian. He joined the Navy as a firefighter.
I knew some Army guys that were in the Navy when I was in. Yep.
And so he died on the USS Cole. All in all, I've had four of my friends that I served with that died, and that kind of taught me to be. And they all died in different ways, but I don't want to see that. And I tell everybody, when they ask me about the Army, I tell them it's the best thing I ever did in my life, but I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. If that
Yeah.
makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. My nephew's going to the Marine Corps in like about a week.
And you're
I'm
like,
so
no.
excited. Well, it's a part of me is saying no, but it's the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps. He's a good kid to begin with, a nice guy, and he's gonna do fine in the Marine Corps. I believe he's gonna do fine.
I'm going to lead into this question a little bit
All
because
right.
here I am, this pacifist, right? And I just again, just let's just all do whatever the hell we want and just get along and all this other shit, right? I mean, why argue and fight and blah blah blah? And then I see these Twinkies go out there and just start destroying these cities. And you talk about triggered. I mean, or do you find yourself what I would call triggered as a veteran to see what's happening in like Portland or my backyard or in Minneapolis or whatever
Or
that.
Miami, my home. Yeah.
Yeah, do you find yourself from the standpoint of a veteran being triggered? Does that make sense?
Well, it wants me to go up and help. In many ways, being over here, I feel kind of helpless. I can't. I want to do something. The only thing I can do is try to, just make my comments known online on social media. I mean, and hopefully one of these idiots will see it and maybe something I say triggers them to say, or something like that. I do
Maybe this
feel
is the best avenue for us to do XYZ. I mean, when they were doing the looting, the night that they burnt down the third precinct here, I actually, my girlfriend was scared. Okay,
yeah,
because all of this stuff is happening, and I have certain aspects of my background that I can get triggered, and that's not a good thing for people to see.
right.
So she kept asking me. She said, "Are you going to go out there?" And I said, "No, no, no, I got this, right?" But I made a Facebook Live video,
Hmm.
and and just in the time, I think I was gone for about an hour, and it was still daylight, right? It
Right.
was before that. It was that day before, and I drove through, and just kind of did a Facebook Live video. By the time I got back, she had convinced all of her friends that I was going out to kill rioters because that's kind of the fear. And it was just kind of, and I came back and she's like, "Oh my God, I was so scared," and blah blah blah. I said, "What were you scared about?" And she said, "Well, I thought you were going to go out and kill him." I said, "No, no." I said, you don't cause harm to stupid people. You educate them,
Yeah, this
right?
is true. This is true.
Or ignorant people. It's not that they're
Ugh, entitled ignorant people.
yeah. It's not that they're dumb though. It's not that they're actually stupid. It's just that they're ignorant. And
Yeah, it goes back to that military thing where that when you're going through boot camp and the guy next to you is a box of rocks, you really see it. But then you know what? 10 years later, he's a freaking E6 staff sergeant or what was E6 in the
yep,
army would
Staff
be.
Sergeant.
Yeah,
Yep.
he's up there, he'd be up there as a staff sergeant. You're like, how the hell did Mickey the Box of Rocks do that? But it's that training. It's because maybe he was ignorant back then. His ignorance showed as a box of rocks. But you know what? The army, the military, whatever it was, educated him.
We educate them, which isn't happening right now with these children.
Exactly. This is what happened. Well, it is happening. It's just the wrong kind of education.
and that's what I wanted to get into, because one of our other topics was the difference in the ed, because you're part of the educational system in Japan.
It's
In,
tough.
in compare, because I want to close the show with this,
All right.
comparing the educational system of the US versus Japan, and progression, using cancel culture, if you will, of erasing this and no, 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 bad, 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 versus embracing that. In the Japanese culture, they don't try and get rid of everything. They take the bad that's right there, and they embrace the good. They learn about everything. They're eager to learn about everything. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but take off from that, because I I think if anybody can learn, if people just tune into this last 10 minutes, I think that your message on what you're about to say is going to be huge.
I think the what's interesting is that they start education very young for the kids, and they teach them right off the bat, you know, I mean, it's the simple things. Homework is important. Every student has to learn math. Every student has to learn Japanese culture. That's part of their training from the time they're like 4 or 5 years old. Uh, every student comes home with homework every day without fail. Um, they also, parents are so uh, involved in their child's education. It is unbelievable here because the parents will come at you, and if they feel based on what their child tells them that they didn't learn enough, the parents will get on you. Why aren't you teaching my kid? It's like, I mean, it's not like in this country, the parents have the balls. The teachers are the yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, yes, sir. The parents are really, really involved with their kids. If I say anything, I would say be involved with with your kid's education, and be the educator for your child. That's what I think the number one thing needs to be, is because I think so many parents in America right now are just sending their kids off to school and saying that's the babysitter, the teacher will teach them. That's the teacher's job. Uh, come home. Well, I'm gonna watch TV. Hey, do your homework, and then they don't pay attention if their kid does their homework. They're
Or even
not
if they have any.
even if they have any, right? Make sure they have any. And if they don't have any, as a parent, give them something.
Sure.
Give them something. Okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna put you in your room. You have your computer. I'm gonna give you an hour. Come back and tell me about the War of 1812. Or something. Do something. These parents in Japan, they not only put the kids through school, but they do after school. The one of the biggest businesses in Japan is all these after school companies. Like I mentioned before, it's called Juku, and Juku is basically kind of like extra learning after school. Parents are always looking to enroll their kids, whether it's to learn English, like what I teach in one of those kind of programs, or it's into any kind of, it could be STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, and math. They're really big into that now in Japan. And I teach engineering. I teach game-based learning. That's another thing. You can let your kids play games and learn, but get an educator to help them with it if you don't want to play the game. But just be involved. That's it. That's it. Pay attention to what your kid's learning. Don't assume that your kid is learning the right thing. If your kid comes home and say, "Hey, uh, who posted that? Did you post that or somebody about the math problem? Who did that? Did you
Mm,
the other day?" Somebody, well, the 2 + 2 = 5 thing is going on right now, but screw that. But what I'm talking about is a little kid. The teacher posted, the problem is 8 + 5, but how do you get 10 from that? And the student said, you can't get 10 because 8 + 5 is equal to 13. And I was like, yay, student. The student was correct. But the teacher came back, no, you have to take 2 away from the 5 and add it to the 8 so you can get 10. Then 10 + 3 = 13. Unbelievable. Like
like
this time.
deductive, yeah, deductive reasoning.
But they're
Yeah,
taking away deductive reasoning. The
yeah.
kid is correct. 8
The
+ 5 does not equal 10.
I'll share after this. I'll share an article that I wrote for LinkedIn that is kind of popular, I guess. But I defined people I call them U's,
Hmm.
EWE, which is a female.
Ah, yeah. I know what it is.
And but
Hippo birdie to you. My dad used to play with words and say happy birthday that way. Hippo birdie to you. And it
it
was always EWE, the sheep.
EWE is an acronym that stands for expectation without effort.
Hmm.
So immediately in my world, I identify people as are they somebody who we're going to, our relationship, are we going to grow off of a conversation together? Are we going to be able to find common ground, be able to have realistic conversations? Are we going to XYZ, or are they a EWE
A
expectation?
sheep. A sheep. I call them too. I call them sheeple.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the
So
same thing.
what's interesting is I wrote that article back in 2014, I think, well before any of this stuff was even in place. I mean, I'll send you a link to it afterwards.
I'll
But
send you a link to I wrote a long time ago when I wanted to start a blog a long time ago about if you don't want Obama as a president, you must be a racist. And I started talking. Yeah, it's an old article. have to search it, but I think you'll get a kick out of it after you read it. It's not very long, but it's interesting.
yeah, I just somebody brought it up to me, this article. They're like, "Wow, did you really write that?" I think it was 2016, and I said, "Yeah." They said it wasn't even relevant then. I said it's been relevant for a long time,
Yeah,
going all the way back to late 90s.
it's
That
picking up traction. Huh? I'll take a look at it. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not really a big fan of LinkedIn, but I hear it's good for advertising. But I'm not such a fan of it.
No, I'm not even ashamed to say this. I think I have 23,000 connections on LinkedIn. And in the entire time I've been on LinkedIn, it has provided
Yeah.
zero value to me in any form. LinkedIn is the most useless platform in existence. And I don't even think you can find a job on it, which is what it was.
Which is what it's supposed to be for, right? Yeah. That's it's supposed. You know, it's the funny thing is that when smartphones were really picking up was like around the time I first got here 9 years ago, and Japanese people were so scared. None of them were on Facebook then. None of them were on Twitter. They were so scared of this SNS. And I was working at this one school, and the guy who hired me, like, I got a job here teaching like a month after I came to Japan. And a really nice guy. Still, I mean, he gave me my first job in Japan, so I'm like I sent him this thing to be like connected on LinkedIn, and the LinkedIn thing kept sending him reminders over and over. Do you want to join? Do you want to join? And he
Oh,
got so pissed at me for doing it. And I'm like, I don't control it, but it keeps sending me stuff. Stop making it. Oh my God, I went through that stuff. And then all these people, in Japan, they just call it SNS, it's SMS is short messaging service, just a regular text message, but SNS was like the short news service or something. I don't know what the N stands for, but short networking service. I don't know. But they
notification.
got notification maybe, and
Yeah.
they got so ticked at me because hey, be my friend on Facebook. No, we don't do SNS. Be my friend on LinkedIn. Oh no, we don't do this. It was like all over the place. So getting over that, and now Japan's picked up on it, and Japanese people tweet, Japanese people all over Facebook. They finally realized, oh, it's not so bad.
I think from what I see, just in because I think we talked about this festival that I want to go to.
Yes. Yes.
In So I've always been kind of I always just look at Japan. I mean, Japan has such a beautiful landscape that I read about Japan all the time. Not all the time, but a lot. And I
Enough.
noticed that they almost seem to be more plugged in, if that is even a thing, even more plugged into technology now than some Americans.
They're huge in technology here. They're
And
huge in technology.
good for them. It's interesting, and I'll make a claim, and I'll make a very bold claim that they've actually been able to do something that the United States is not, which is be able to maintain a respectful culture, be plugged into technology, still have still be a very humble and gracious culture and group of people, And the US has turned into everything but that.
Oh, it's so frustrating. It's like it just bugs the heck out of me.
It's depressing, isn't it?
It is depressing, and it's like, when people tell me not to worry about it, and I'm like, God, but I do worry about it because it's like if the US turns like the way that all these people are trying to make it turn, this socialist kind of, I don't know what the hell they want to call it, but if the US goes that way, it's over for us. It's done. It's like you're not going to, I mean, life is as you know it around the world is going to be affected. It's not just here in Japan it's going to be affected, but it's like everywhere. It's
Yeah,
going to.
I don't think people understand how much of the US consumerism could potentially negatively impact the rest of the world. If we create this breadline economy here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. It's called, what is it called? Sakura?
Sakura, which is cherry blossom. So it's the cherry. Actually, if you're in the States and you can't get to Japan, go to DC. I think it's around the beginning of May, maybe end of April. But they do have the annual Sakura Festival, and right around by the Lincoln Memorial, there is a set of trees that were donated by the Japanese. I think it was 1932, and you can do the walk around the sakura when they're blooming, and it's very beautiful. If you can't make it to Japan, go there.
I'd
It's in
rather do
DC.
it, man. We can hang out and have a good time. And
Yeah, we could. And I think my question to you was, I have a question for you. So this abstinence from having a drink, is that going to change when your son turns 21 and he's legal?
well, my son is 21 now.
Hmm.
So, and I'll share this with you. The day my son was born, my life changed, and I was a very free living person.
Free living. You're an army brat. I'm not brat, but an army guy. I
I was
understand.
I was an army guy that loved to have a lot of fun,
Mm,
and I live, set your hair on fire and run around and act stupid and do whatever. But um, I realized that even though I was married to his mother at
right.
the time, but I
Wow.
still I still wasn't responsible. And people talk about this, and a lot of people think that it's kind of garbage. But my son was born, and I said, "Wow." I mean, literally, they hadn't even cleaned off all the gunk and stuff off of them yet. And
Yeah, I was there for my firstborn too. I understand.
I just looked at him. I said, "I got to grow up." And my life changed like that minute. And I just never, I mean, I had a lot of bad habits, and a lot of them, I actually realized, to be honest with you, Scott, I don't like the taste of alcohol.
Mm.
I had drank a whole bunch of it up until that day. I mean, a bunch of it. And I actually realized that I was just doing it for the effect. And I don't
Yeah.
miss any of that.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't,
well, regardless, you can come here and we'll have fun whether we drink or not. It's a wonderful place. There's not enough room for you to stay here, but I'm more than welcome to stick by, and I'll give you a tour, and I'll give you, first-hand person tour, and you know,
yeah.
bring
I'll,
bring the family too. That'd be cool too. And yeah, we'll go see some really cool things. It's unbelievably amazing here in Japan. It's
I
like,
want to see I want to see I want to see the restaurants. I want to see the culture. I want to see Tokyo. I mean, Tokyo is just, I
it's a
don't know.
blast. It's a blast. And the coolest thing is that, like one of the coolest things in Tokyo is for me is Shibuya. And Shibuya is like a central hub. You have a few central areas in Tokyo, Shibuya, Shinjuku, Ikebukuro, a couple other places. But I am literally, whether I go by train or go by my scooter. I have a scooter, 125cc scooter. It's all the rage here. In the US, you're a wimp. I had a motorcycle in the US. I had
Mhm.
cars, but in Japan, you got a scooter. That's cool. No problem. Nobody says anything bad. It's like 15 minutes away. It's like unbelievable. And it's like the busiest intersection in the world up. Shibuya Scramble. And like, it's like one, two, three, four. like 5 roads intersecting. It's all over the world all the time. When people talk about Japan, you'll see this big, huge intersection, people walking across fast. It's so coordinated. It's like a dance, because as soon as it turns red, everybody clears out, then the cars go. And the red lights come, cars stop, and everybody goes. There's very few traffic accidents here. It's unbelievable. It's really
because
cool.
because people are diligent, they pay attention, and they're respectful.
It's very, very difficult to get your driver's license. That's the truth. It took me 3 times taking the test. After driving for close to 30 years, it took me 3 times to pass the Japanese driving test. 3
Really?
times. You have to take a physical driving test. And
Wow.
because here's another thing. Japanese roads don't have names.
What do they have? How do you know where you're at?
Well, now we use Google Maps, but but they don't have names. And the way they number houses is amazing. So if you have a block of land, this is really interesting. You have a block of land, and John Yakitori puts his house on the first corner. That's the first house here. He gets number 1, right? Now, they build another house next to him, or they put all these other houses that built next to him. Whoever fills in the next house, whether it's right next to John or on the complete opposite corner of that section of land, that's number 2. Whoever's third, that's number 3. So
Okay.
you can go over a plot of land, and 1, 2, 3, and 4 are not next to each other, almost never.
How
And
does
none of the streets have names. Figure that one out. It's really cool. It's
yeah,
really
how does anybody get mail? Or I mean, wow. That's that's
Because
interesting.
every section of town is blocked off into sections. Everything has every little section of town, and they call it chome. So, like, I'm in the 5th chome, which is go chome. So, in this section, I'm in out of go chome. Then they break it up into smaller blocks, and those smaller blocks, within those smaller blocks, they give the numbers. So, my building here on this block is number 1, but my apartment unit is up on the 7th floor. So it's like 5, which is the big Chome area,
Mhm.
and then dash 13, which is the sub area, and then building number 1, which is right here, and then unit number 7 something. And
Sure.
then
It'd be
so
5-1-13 dash.
the opposite. Well, yeah, 5.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Got
So
it. So it's all just a numbering system.
yeah, it's the numbering, and then you say, where is this chome? So this chome, this section of land, is in whatever ku you're in. So every little section is called. So cities and towns are hard to describe in Japan. It's not like the US where you have states and cities and stuff like that. You got cities and cities within cities, little towns within cities. It's really confusing when you first come here, but as long as you're not delivering sandwiches like I did when I first came to Japan. I had a job delivering sandwiches in Tokyo. But
That
the reason I got that job is because I wanted to learn about Tokyo.
sure.
So I was teaching English for like 4 years here, and I was like, man, I want to do something else. My wife's like, you don't speak English, or you don't speak Japanese. And I'm like, all right, well, I got to find something. So we started looking and looking and looking. And then there was this job to to deliver sandwiches for this sandwich shop. And the sandwich shop owner was from New Zealand, and his coworker there was from Brazil, and they spoke perfect English, and I could work there. So we just put my little phone on there on the scooter, and he had the scooter. I just used his scooter. I would drive all over Tokyo delivering sandwiches. It was awesome to do a job like that. I got
Sure.
to learn all about Tokyo, all the little nooks and crannies, all these companies. I delivered sandwiches to Google. I delivered sandwiches to all these Fujitsu, all these other companies and everything. It's like amazing. It was like I was in the heart of Tokyo doing it. So it was a good experience.
That's awesome. And that's
It is
probably where
cool.
you came up with the eatanythingjapan.com idea.
It was. It's partially that. Because I knew his shop was an English speaking shop. So, but it's like foreigners coming to Japan. The first thing we want to do. I just had an idea in my head of making a commercial where mother, father, daughter, and son are coming off the subway station, and they're like, "Dad, we're hungry," and all they see is nothing but Japanese characters all the way down the street, and they have no idea what they're looking at. And then getting this the app that will just take them to a restaurant that at least has English menus. They can sit down and they can read the menu and say, I want this. And there's some really cool things about culture. Like you go to a restaurant in America and the server is only responsible for those 5 tables in his area.
Mm-hmm.
But in Japan, the server works, all servers work the whole restaurant. And the first person you call, that's your server. And you just say sumimasen, which is like, excuse me, you know. And so whoever's around, they come to your table. Yes, well, I'll take your order. And, you know, a few minutes later, if it's a different person, sumimasen, they'll come around, they'll order you a few more beers or whatever else you want to order.
Sure.
It's really cool system. It's amazing here.
We're going to have to hang out at some point. Give it
Yeah,
about
no
a year.
problem.
I mean,
What's that?
give it about a year, though. I have,
Yeah, no problem.
I have a whole list when we finally get to, get out of whatever this is, this nightmare or bad dream or whatever you want to call it.
It's called fear porn.
Yeah. But I think Japan is 4th on my list. I'll have to look.
That's
I need
fine.
to go to Greece to visit Elias, and
I've been
I've
to
always
Greece.
wanted to go to Greece to see that underwater city thing.
Atlantis?
No, they have that. Yeah, Greece has an entire city that's submerged, that's underwater.
Really? I've been
And
to Greece like 3 or 4 times when I was in the Navy. That was a cool thing. I got to go all over the Med because I was an East Coast sailor. So we went to, man, I have so many good military stories for you, but we went to Greece at least 3 times. We went to Rhodes, Greece. We went to, I went to Corfu twice and I went to Rhodes. And Rhodes is really cool because it's one of those cities that was built around the castle. So the castle is like the city, it's like there's like castle walls when the ship is out in the port and you just see just a huge castle. Oh, it's fantastic. The world is an amazing place. Don't screw up America. That's all I can say. And I hope
you
to see
broke
you
up a little bit there. Say that again.
I said, don't screw up America, people.
Yeah, don't make it so that nobody wants to come here because we've destroyed everything. I mean, it's I don't
It's
know.
still the greatest country, most progressed country in the world for almost anything you want to do. And there's nothing you can't do. I mean, just set your mind to it and you can do it. It's fantastic. I still love America, even though I live in Japan. And I know maybe a few might wish I were back in the States, but it really is cool over here. It really is cool. I'm getting older. There's no reason to, screw all this up.
Yeah, it makes sense to me based on current climate to bring people there to visit instead of the other way around.
I'll tell you what, it's better to come to Japan than it is to go to China. That's for sure. It's better to come to Japan than go to freaking Cuba. It's better to come to Japan than to go to Vietnam. Sorry.
Venezuela, right? Who the hell?
Or Venezuela. Yeah. I've been to South America too. My first wife was from Ecuador. I went down there a few times. That's a pretty cool place.
Ecuador.
Ecuador. Right between Colombia and Peru. Right on the border there.
That's a rich culture too. And
well, they're not rich in money, but that's pretty interesting culture.
rich in history. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
We gotta
well,
cut this short, man. It's like
yeah,
I don't know,
almost 2 hours, man. That's great. Didn't seem like that long.
1 in the morning there now.
It is almost 1, but it's okay. I'm like a night owl anyways, so.
Well, I appreciate having you. I appreciate having you on the show, and I want to do more of these. Like I said, I want to, I'm trying to gauge everybody and figure out where they stand on different things that are within my networks and connections, and then bring people back to have meaningful discussions and conversations about things that they may not agree with. And I think we talked about that before. So
sure,
I'd love to have you back in the future.
It's okay. I'm there. Just we got to set it up. That's all. But since it's so late at night for me and easy early morning for you, it shouldn't be hard at all.
Yeah. Most of the interviews happen in the afternoon here, which that would make it the morning. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out, I guess.
We figured this one out. I think we can do it again.
Yeah, we'll be all right. We'll figure it out.
All right.
All right. Thanks for coming on.